All right, this is the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's the sixth meeting of 2026. We have a quorum present. Although the first item on the agenda is the motion to approve minutes, we're going to take the agenda out of order this morning and take one advisory opinion first because folks have a meeting of some kind they need to be at. In fact, the meeting was already started. So I'm going to call up Tricia Milos, please. Teresa is.
Yes.
There's one thing that folks can write about, but it's not terrible with names.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Milos, Secretary Pryor, Attorney Gray. We're here today on the petitioner's request for an advisory opinion implicating Commission's Regulation 1.5.1, which is the prohibition against a public official accepting employment from their own boards while serving and during the 1-year period following their severance from office. The petitioner was first appointed as a board member of the Rhode Island Life Science Hub in 2024. That entity, a quasi-public entity, was created by statute in 2023, and its initial 15-member board was appointed by the governor in January and February of 2024, with the petitioner serving in the position where there is a requirement that the board member be a member of the Life Science Trade Association. Shortly after the petitioner was first appointed, if the commission will recall, as set forth in her request letter and in the draft advisory opinion that you have before you today, the petitioner requested and received an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission in 2024 relative to her ability to resign from the board and serve as a paid interim president to the fledgling Rhode Island Life Science Hub, so that the board could conduct a nationwide search for its permanent president and CEO. The Commission in Advisory Opinion 2024-23 found that an exception was warranted as allowed under Regulation 1.5.1, given that not permitting the petitioner to accept such paid employment on a temporary basis would cause a substantial harm to the governmental entity, the Rhode Island Life Science Hub. And consistent with the granting of that advisory opinion just 2 years ago, the commission resigned from the board of directors of the Life Science Hub and served until January of 2025 as the interim president, while the Life Science Hub selected what it thought would be permanent president and CEO, and that individual was subject to Senate confirmation in January of 2025. The individual was selected as the president and CEO, subject to an initial 3-year employment agreement with the Life Science Hub. And in January of 2025, the governor reappointed Dr. Milos to her position on the board of directors once again. The petitioner informs that in February of 2026, after completing just the initial year of his initial 3-year employment contract with the Rhode Island Life Science Hub, the president and CEO unexpectedly tendered 2 weeks' notice of his resignation, once again leaving this new quasi-public without leadership. On March 9th of this year, the board of directors of the Life Science Hub elevated its vice president to the position of interim president, while it again conducts a search for permanent leadership for the Rhode Island Life Science Hub. However, the board also determined that due to the very technical and scientific nature of its statutory mission, additional help and assistance was needed to assist the interim president, who did not possess the requisite scientific background to effectuate some of the skills and management that needed to be undertaken. The board determined that it would hire an advisor to the interim president during the search. And it once again wished to utilize the services of Dr. Milos in an interim capacity. Mindful of the advisory opinion she previously received, the petitioner resigned from her position on the board of directors on March 17th and immediately commenced providing volunteer unpaid advisory assistance to the Life Science Hub's interim president. The board approved this advisory role in a paid capacity with the terms and conditions of that employment to be worked out between the petitioner and its interim chair, which at the time was Rhode Island Commerce Secretary Stephen Pryor, who is here today, in support of this request for an advisory opinion granting a hardship exception. The board also provided the caveat that this is all subject to the petitioner receiving a favorable advisory opinion, once again, from the Ethics Commission. The petitioner has represented that she is not seeking, does not wish to accept any position as a permanent president and CEO, nor does she wish to serve beyond selection of a permanent president and CEO in an advisory capacity. This is a temporary interim measure to make sure that the Rhode Island Life Science Hub does not lose any momentum in its initial years of operation. Joining the petitioner in submitting correspondence, setting forth the particulars justifying application of an exception here is Secretary Pryor, who has been the interim chair of the Rhode Island Life Science Hub, which also had lost its chairperson during the past year as well. Both the petitioner and the interim chair note the highly technical scientific nature of review processes that are involved, that the interim president would need to be involved in, and for which the petitioner's special skill set and background is needed for assistance. And these specifically include the fact that in the past 2 years, the Life Science Hub has awarded over $20 million in grants to over 48 recipients. And these grants have certain technical milestones that have to be met, and they undergo a review process by Rhode Island Life Science Hub leadership that is of a technical scientific nature, and that further disbursements that may not be had until these milestones are met. The Life Science Hub also is operating the Ocean State Lab, which includes dry and wet laboratory space in Rhode Island, that there is a tenancy application process, again, scientific in nature, and for which the petitioner's skill set is needed for the assistance of the interim president. As set forth in the draft advisory opinion, the commission looks at whether or not facts justify application of an exception. Is there sufficient evidence that there would be a hardship to the governmental body? Is this position temporary in nature? And for all of these reasons, the advisory opinion that was previously issued to the petitioner, 2 years ago, is directly on point here. It is virtually identical factually. And the staff submits that the facts are now even more compelling, given that substantial activities and monies and grant funding are at issue, and that there has been a dearth of leadership in the past 2 years. And this advisory opinion request is consistent with what the commission did in 2024-23. And the representations of the petitioner and the interim chair that these services are needed on an immediate basis. The petitioner has resigned and she is serving in an unpaid temporary capacity. For all of these reasons, the draft recommendation before you is that these circumstances are unique and justify an exception to permit the petitioner to serve on a temporary basis as an advisor to the interim president, and doing so would not run afoul of regulation 1.5.1's prohibitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Milos. You've had an opportunity to see this opinion ahead of time, correct?
Yes.
Do you or either of the folks with you have any questions or concerns about the opinion as drafted?
No, we do not.
I think the record probably should reflect that you're represented by Council Douglas Gray here today, and that Secretary Pryor is with you as well.
Yes.
It's a nice show of support, I might say. Our pleasure.
Commissioners, anyone have any questions, concerns to present to either Mr. Rezzo or to Dr. Milos and her fellows? So, there being none, is there a motion to approve and issue the advisory opinion as presented by the staff? So moved. Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Celerini. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Mr. Browner.
Aye.
Callahan.
Aye.
Mr. Celerini.
Aye.
Mr. Rabideau.
Aye.
Mr. Strauss.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
you very much.
Appreciate it.
Great.
We will return in about a moment to the regular agenda.
Back and forth. Thank you.
First item on the regular agenda, or technically the second item, is a motion to approve the minutes of the open session held on March 17th, 2026. Is there a motion? Motion by Commissioner Susie. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Callahan. Further discussion? I can't imagine there is. A roll call vote, Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Mr. Browner.
Aye.
Mr. Callahan.
Aye.
Federini.
Abstain.
Mr. Rabideau.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next item is the motion to approve the minutes of the open session held on March 24th, 2026.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Callahan. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Rabideau. Roll call vote, Commissioner Susie, Commissioner Browner. Aye. Commissioner Callahan. Aye. Commissioner Celerini.
Abstain.
Mr. Rabideau.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Abstain.
Chair votes here and votes aye. The last item on minutes is the motion to approve the minutes of the open session held on April 8th, 2026. Is there such a motion? So moved. Motion by Commissioner Callahan, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Browner. A roll call vote, Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Commissioner Browner.
Aye.
Commissioner Callahan.
Aye.
Commissioner Celerini.
Aye.
Commissioner Rabideau.
Aye.
Mr. Strauss is an abstention, I assume. And the chair votes aye. That completes the first four items on the agenda. So let us now move to the fifth item on the agenda, which is the director's report. Mr. Grant.
Good morning, everyone. So we just have a few things on the director's report today. Just go down the list. We start with complaints and investigations. Currently, we have no investigations pending. There is the one Thorson complaint is still technically pending as we await legal counsel drafting the commission's decision, which I'm sure he's in contact with you about. Just a couple things on that. First off, I just want to thank the commissioners for their work in that case. That was, we don't have a lot of adjudications in front of the commission. It's a fairly rare event. This was one of the more complicated ones. There was a lot of work to be had. There were multiple pretrial motions, discovery motions for out-of-state discovery, motions to exclude the probable cause hearing in a 2-day adjudication. So it's a lot of work for a volunteer board. I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that if you're all volunteers, you don't get paid for this. And so I think that was excellent work. And I also want to mention the staff's work on this case, particularly our administrative staff. We're not a court of law here, but sometimes we have to operate like one. And our administrative staff acts as our clerks and our court staff. And particularly, we're lucky to have Tracy Texera, who's our office manager. Fortunately, she also has a bachelor's degree in paralegal studies. Also Sabrina DePina, who's our administrative aide, who we were fortunate enough to scout from a litigation firm when she came to the Ethics Commission. So there was a lot of clerk type work behind the scenes with all of the exhibits and all of the work. And just, I think, so between the staff work and the commission's work, just, I think, speaking for the staff, we're all really proud to work for the Ethics Commission and for the way that was handled.
Before you move on, I think we are very happy with the way you worked on this, staff worked on this. I don't want to comment on the case itself because the opposing counsel isn't here. But that was a lot of hard work for you all. It was a lot of hard work for us. I think everyone on the commission who was present appreciated both the presentation and, quite frankly, the opportunity to participate in adjudication, which we had not done before. I also want to specifically mention Ms. Texera because her help was invaluable. Primarily because, as you know, Mr. Graham, we cut you out completely from the process for about a month beforehand in order to preserve the separation between your roles as director and prosecutor. And Ms. Texera took over much of that role, along with, I might say, our counsel, Mr. DeSimone, who was utterly invaluable leading up to the adjudication and particularly the deliberation. I do want to thank everybody involved. I know the commissioners were very appreciative of how it all went down, and so we thank the staff as well.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to advisory opinions, happy to report that we have addressed the backlog that had come up with the beginning of the year. So currently, there are 10 advisory opinions, actually 9 now that Dr. Milos just received hers. There were 5 on today's agenda, so there are 5 outstanding advisory opinions, and they're all being addressed in a timely way. And credit for that, getting that backlog down, primarily goes to the 2 people who handle most of our advisory opinions, which Lynn Radicius and Teodora Papa. So it's nice to have that cleared.
And on that one, I assume that none of the ones that the other 5 that are pending have immediate time deadline concerns for the people involved.
That's right. Those that do, the way we address those that do have immediate concerns is we try to get them on the very next meeting. Occasionally, and you saw this, I think, at the last meeting, we do have the ability. I have the ability, which has been given to me by the commissions in the past, to grant what's called a safe harbor in an appropriate circumstance. So safe harbor is a situation where the facts are so clear and the precedent is so well established that I am confident that in the outcome before the commission. And in those cases, I can, if there's a delay between asking for the advisory opinion and the next time that you meet, I'm able to give clearance for them to go ahead, do what it is they're seeking to do, subject to you ultimately deciding whether or not to ratify that decision or to overturn it. I use that very sparingly, but I do use it from time to time on inappropriate cases.
And likewise, if on your review in that context, you don't think it's clear, they get told that and they have to wait.
That's right. Absolutely. Moving on to Access to Public Records Act requests. We've had 9 APRA requests since the last meeting. 11 since the last meeting. 9 of them we completed in 1 business day. 2 of them took a few more than 1 business day, and those both related to requests for the pre-briefing memos. And our policy there was we don't want to make those public until you've had a chance to see them and look at them at a commission meeting. So we withheld those until the morning of April 8th, and then we made them public.
And you said pre-briefing memos, but you meant pre-adjudication.
Yes, the pre-trial memos that you received in the Dorset case. Just to let you know what these requests are related to, 5 had to do with advisory opinions, 3 were for complaint-related materials, 2 related to financial disclosure, and 1 related to recusal forms. Moving on to financial disclosure, again, 2025 filing year is up and running, accessible on our website. We did send, just so you know, our normal policy. So the forms all went out and you all received those. We sent a reminder email on March 31st to anyone who hadn't filed yet. Most of you had by then, by the way. Thank you. We will send more reminder emails coming up again. So on April 17th, with 1 week to go, we'll send another batch of reminder emails to everyone who hasn't filed yet. And then on the filing deadline, which is April, I think I said April, I might say March, April 17th. And then on April 24th, which is the deadline day, we'll send another reminder. And that'll get most of our people in, and then we'll continue to follow up the way we do after the deadlines. Just to let you know where we are as of this morning, 2,407 people have filed so far. And that's right now, our population of filers is about 4,100. So we're at 59%, which is right on track. It's actually about a percentage ahead of where we would normally be. So we're in very, very good shape with compliance. We have 173 paper filings that have come in so far, and I'm expecting about 400 paper filings this year. 9 or 10% of the people file on paper. And we're always trying to get people to switch over to electronic. Some people just prefer paper, but it's very expensive for us when people file on paper. They're, aside from the staff cost, just mailing out these paper forms costs us about $2,000 in extra postage to mail the forms. The printing of these forms costs us around $2,500. And then for every person who files on paper, there are these extra steps we have to take to upload them to our viewer. And just to upload those 400 costs us about $2,400 because we have to license some extra security measures in order to access the Amazon cloud buckets where we keep these things. So it's about $20 per file on paper. So we're always trying to do what we can to move people over to online filing, which is much, much cheaper.
So I understand when you get a paper filing, that means that someone on staff goes in and puts all the entries in as they came in on the paper.
We don't do that. We first redact the mailing address because mailing address is not part of what's required to be disclosed. So we redact that. Then we have to scan it. And then the scan is uploaded to the cloud and in a bucket or a holding device in the cloud where from our website, that's where it accesses those things. So with online filing, all of that is automated. The moment you hit submit, everything is just automatic. And so there's a lot of extra work with that, but it's always coming down. So every year we get better and better compliance rates. We have some ideas on staff for a couple of things we want to try out, which I'll be talking to you about in terms of nudging people to file online. Part of it is we're required by law to mail a copy of the form to all 4,000 filers. So that's a change that we could probably make. We could probably convince someone up at the assembly to make a small amendment to the financial disclosure statute to say instead of having to mail one to every single person, that instead we mail online filing instructions and instructions on how to get a paper filing if that's what you prefer. And some people will always prefer it, and there's nothing wrong. Filing it on paper is fine. But I think anyway, more to come on that.
I have a question on that last point, Jason. Is my memory correct that if, for a chance, a member of the public does not get a mailing of the financial form, that tolls the reporting deadline?
Yes, so we have a policy here that until we identify a required filer and send them their notice that they're required to file and instructions to file, that we wouldn't accept a complaint against that person because they haven't been properly notified of their filing requirement. Once we identify you, put you in the database and send you a notice and a copy of the form, at that point, you're a required filer. And people do fall through the cracks sometimes. We rely on the city and town clerks and the governor's office and others to send us the names of new appointees and new major decision makers. and the Board of Elections. And every now and then, a name, for whatever reason, won't make its way to us. And we usually find out sooner or later, but sometimes it might take a little extra time.
I would like then to express a reservation about any proposed legislation. I think that that's an important guideline for, excuse me, safety mechanism for the public. That if they don't get a report, the deadline is told. I don't think that should be given up as a safeguard for the public.
I have no intention of proposing to give it. The idea that until someone is provided with notice and instructions on how to file, that they would not be subject to any type of complaint or enforcement action.
So what about somebody who's filed before? But somehow or another didn't get notice this year? That they know that they have an obligation to file.
That would be that's not the circumstance I'm talking about. It would be incredibly rare for someone to have a filing requirement and then suddenly fall off. And we have, our mailing is locked down pretty tight. So we do our mailings through the state's central mailing office with lists that are generated and certified back to us on the date the mailings are made, with a list of every single person and the address that we sent something to. We maintain that as evidence. Let's see, General Office Administration, our next regular commission meeting will be May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And that's about all I have today.
Are you bringing the chips?
No, I don't know if it's, no, may not bring chips because we didn't have anything for St. Patrick's Day. on March 17th. So I object, whatever that means.
You were on that delivery list, weren't you?
Other holiday room.
All right. We have a sign-in sheet. Oh, somewhere it came to us.
Yeah.
We did it. All right, okay, we're back to advisory opinions, and the next advisory opinion here is George, and I'm sorry, sir, I cannot pronounce your name. Neem, perhaps?
George Neamy.
Neemy, please come forward.
Good morning, everyone. This draft can be found at tab E in your binders. By way of housekeeping, I noticed when preparing for today that in the very last paragraph on page 6, I used the word finally to start consecutive sentences. So in the name of all things redundant, I would like to strike the second finally and just start that sentence with this. Welcome, Mr. Neamy. Mr. Neamy is employed as a principal civil engineer with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, a position he has held since 2009. More about that in a moment. In his private capacity, Mr. Neamy is a licensed professional engineer who also maintains a professional certification with the National Ready Mixed Concrete Association, or the NRMCA. He has asked for an advisory opinion as to whether he is prohibited by the Code of Ethics from assisting in his private capacity ready-mixed concrete plants in Rhode Island with achieving NRMCA certification. Looking at Mr. Neamy's public employment, certain of his fellow employees in the materials division at RIDOT are tasked with reviewing concrete mix designs and testing concrete mix samples submitted by ready-mixed concrete plants in Rhode Island who wish their plant to be included in RIDOT's approved list of concrete mix suppliers for state projects. RIDOT only uses cement from plants in Rhode Island on its projects. Mr. Neamy is then tasked with reviewing the results of the testing performed by his colleagues of, among other things, air content, temperature, and unit weight of concrete mix samples to determine whether those results meet the relevant specifications identified in RIDOT's Blue Book. To determine the adequacy of the test results, Mr. Neamy matches the numbers produced by the test samples against the corresponding numbers identified in the Blue Book for each particular test. The petitioner states that his public duties do not involve the exercise of any discretion on his part. In the event that a testing number falls outside of the specs outlined in the Blue Book, Mr. Nemi will forward that information to a RIDOT engineer, who may or may not then choose to consult with a private engineer retained by RIDOT about how best to resolve that particular situation. The review of designs and testing of samples by his colleagues, followed by the petitioner's subsequent determination of compliance by matching the test results to those required by the Blue Book, might be performed only once per plant, provided that that plant doesn't later alter or change their materials or suppliers. I mentioned that in his private capacity, Mr. Nemi is a licensed professional engineer with NRMCA certification. This allows him to assist concrete plants in a number of states, including Rhode Island, with achieving NRMCA certification. Now, to date, he has only done this for plants outside of Rhode Island in other states. All ready-mixed concrete plants in Rhode Island that wish to be considered for work on a state contract require NRMCA certification. An applicant must submit a checklist to the NRMCA, evidencing compliance by the subject plant in a number of categories. And Mr. Nemi informs that none of the checklist categories involve his public duties at RIDOT. The completion and submission of a checklist on behalf of a plant in Rhode Island seeking NRMCA certification must be performed by a licensed professional engineer in Rhode Island who is also NRMCA certified. The engineer first visits the applicant plant site, and there the engineer will review other plant certifications to determine whether they are current. The engineer will also ensure that various chemical materials kept on site at the plant are properly stored in separate and weather-protected containers. The petitioner states that a number of other relevant checks and inspections will be made, the satisfactory results of which will then allow the engineer to complete and submit the checklist to the NRMCA for a determination about certification. When a checklist is approved by the NRMCA will then forward a certificate of conformance to the engineer who submitted the checklist. The engineer then gets it to the plant. Petitioner estimates that the entire NRMCA certification process takes about 5 weeks from start to finish. He adds that participating plants must seek NRMCA certification every 2 years. Petitioner states that of the 6 concrete mix plants in Rhode Island that are currently NRMCA certified, 2 or 3 of those plants currently or will soon require recertification. The petitioner explains that until recently, he was one of only 3 people approved by the NRMCA to submit checklists on behalf of plant applicants in Rhode Island. The other 2 people are no longer on the list, and currently Mr. Nemi is literally the only licensed professional engineer available to assist ready-mixed concrete plants in Rhode Island with seeking NRMCA certification. Mr. Nemi explains that he has been asked by one such plant to assist with that plant's pursuit of recertification. He would like to assist this plant in this regard and others, if requested, provided that he's not prohibited by the Code of Ethics from doing so. He estimates that if permitted to do this, it would take him 1 to 2 hours to complete the necessary site visit and paperwork for each. His fee would be due from the plant at the time he submits the checklist to the NRMCA. Mr. Nemi emphasizes that upon the addition of at least one other qualified licensed professional engineer to the list of names of individuals approved to do this work for plants in Rhode Island, he will no longer do so. Mr. Nemi states it is highly unlikely that he would ever be called upon to determine a particular plant's compliance with RIDOT's Blue Book specifications during a period when he might be assisting that plant with updating its NRMCA certification. The relevant code provisions address secondary employment and engaging in official activity which is in substantial conflict with the discharge of one's public duties, meaning there's reason to believe or expect that the public employee, or in this case, a business associate, will be directly financially impacted by his official activity. Also, a public employee shall not use his public office to obtain financial gain for himself or among others, his business associates. Here, Mr. Nemi would be a business associate of the plants in Rhode Island whom he assists with achieving NRMCA certification. Importantly, the private work in which Mr. Nemi wishes to engage may not impair his independence of judgment or create an interest in substantial conflict with his public duties. Of particular relevance is the following: the nexus between his public duties and private employment, whether he completes the work outside of his normal work hours without the use of public resources, whether he is to appear before his own agency, whether his private work is to be conducted outside of the areas over which he has decision-making jurisdiction in his public capacity, and that he not use his public position to solicit business or customers for his private undertaking. Additionally, while the code clearly prohibits a public official or employee from participating in matters directly affecting a current business associate, the Ethics Commission has permitted a public official to participate in matters involving or impacting a former business associate, assuming no other conflicts were present. To determine whether a business associate relationship is ongoing, the Ethics Commission usually asks 3 questions. First, are the parties conducting ongoing business transactions? Next, do the parties have outstanding accounts, or does one still owe the other money? And finally, is there an anticipated future relationship between the parties? A yes to any one of those questions would be an indication of an ongoing business associate relationship. Here, Mr. Nemi represents that none of the NRMCA checklist categories involve or impact his public duties at RIDOT. Also, Mr. Nemi's submission of a checklist would be made to the NRMCA and not to RIDOT, so he would not be appearing before his own agency. For these reasons, the facts that do not indicate that the private employment in which Mr. Nemi seeks to engage would either impair his independence of judgment or create an interest in substantial conflict with his public duties, which he states do not involve the exercise of any discretion on his part. Further, based on the petitioner's representation that it is highly unlikely that he would ever be called upon to determine a particular plant's compliance with Blue Book specifications during the period where he might be assisting that same plant with NRMCA certification, there appears to be no situation in which the petitioner would be participating in matters in his public capacity which could impact a concrete plant that he's assisting in his private capacity, during which time the plant would be his business associate. This is buttressed by the petitioner's representation that payment for his private services would be required at the time he submits the complete checklist to the NRMCA, and that he has no plans to do this work for Rhode Island plants once he's no longer the only qualified person to do so. Additionally, Mr. Nemi's description of his public duties relative to determining the adequacy of samples collected by his RIDOT colleagues, whereby he matches the results to those numbers identified in the Blue Book without exercising discretion, appears to be ministerial in nature. For this reason, the petitioner's exercise of his public duties would not directly financially impact his business associate, were those duties to occur during the time that he's assisting the plant with NRMCA certification, something Mr. Nemi has stated is highly unlikely. Accordingly, it is the opinion of staff that the petitioner is not prohibited by the Code of Ethics from assisting in his private capacity concrete plants in Rhode Island with achieving NRMCA certification. However, the petitioner is required to recuse from any matters in his public capacity that would financially impact his current business associates, which include both the plants in Rhode Island for whom he is in the process of seeking recertification or for whom he anticipates repeating that process in the future. Additionally, Mr. Nemi must complete all work for his private clients outside of his regular work hours for RIDOT without the use of public resources. He may not use his public position to solicit business or clients for his private work. Finally, Mr. Nemi may not disclose confidential information acquired by him during the course of his public duties at RIDOT. Of course, this advisory opinion can't anticipate every situation in which a conflict might arise, provides general guidance based on the application of the facts as represented. Mr. Nemi is advised to remain vigilant about identifying potential conflicts of interest and to either recuse or seek further guidance. I'm happy to do my best to answer your questions or to defer to Mr. Nemi as appropriate.
Thank you. Mr. Nemi, you've worked with Mr. Decius to reach this opinion. You've had a chance to review this opinion. True.
Right.
Do you have any questions, concerns about the opinion?
No.
You understand the limitations of what you can do and your obligations to meet the terms of the code. Mr. Revenue.
Mr. Nemi, I have a question about your work at RIDOT. If a project is determined, a DOT project is determined to have used inferior concrete for whatever reason, and there was litigation that came up as a result of that, would you be involved? Would you be, do you have responsibility in determining if that plant used inferior product as part of your everyday work?
No.
You would not, so you would not be called, and the only reason is if, and I just happen to know, say Bacala did something and you were the, you know. Alright, fair point. But do you know what I'm saying? If they use some product and it was determined to be inferior,
No, because we have standards book and the RIDOT.
Yeah.
They have to follow, to buy the material or the sources. They have to go with this specification, which I have nothing to do with that. It's been done for years and years and years. Before even I worked for RIDOT.
but if the product didn't meet the specification, if the plant itself put out an inferior product.
I'm sorry, let me explain something.
Sure.
When we do the plant inspection, as according to an MMCA.
Yep.
There is 10 subject to follow, which has nothing to do with RIDOT or anything like that. Only thing what I check to make sure the pin, like the aggregate 3/4 and 1 pin. The sand is not touching each other because you don't need contamination.
Mhm.
That's what I do for the plant. And I would say the scale, it's calibrated by somebody else. I make sure there is date on it and it is approved to be fixed,
So the NRMCA checklist really doesn't have anything to do with creating concrete.
Correct.
It's just.
Correct.
Okay,
Just the equipment and,
okay, thank you.
it's like, compare orange to apple.
Mhm.
But if you can, I don't know, I cannot do it, but you can.
Commissioner Callahan.
Yeah, can we walk back through, did I understand correctly that in order to be on the vendor list for DOT, the company must be
She
NRMCA
is certified.
certified.
Right.
So that strikes me a little bit as I understand we're kind of suggesting that he's paid and it's a one-off business association. But there's also a thread in my mind here that is in that business's best interest to work with Mr. Nemi straight away in order to become at least competitive on the vendor list. And I just don't understand how that's not maybe it's not a factor, but I'm using poor language here, but that strikes me as a little bit of a conflict that if he's the only one, and this isn't you, sir, like we get it, but it does sound to me that, okay, if I'm rephrase. I believe there is potential for a business to go, well, I need to get certified in order to do this.
Mhm.
Now, we could argue that because Mr. Nemi's the only one, that's the only place you can go, makes sense. Or we could also argue, someone perhaps in a nefarious manner would go, well, if you go here, you're gonna get on the vendor list. And that's the best place to be to work on RIDOT. That I don't.
I know, I'm sorry to say it, but it's a little confused, what I do, like you see, I did 10 of this in Mass last year. And you cannot see my name anywhere. That's an MCA. Can I pass it to you?
If you want to, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm second here, okay. Can you see my name?
No,
I know, but I know that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It is something I do and I turn my back and that's it. Nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
Nobody knows, even the owner or, gentlemen, they don't call me, they don't do nothing,
okay,
that's it. And I've been like that certified for maybe 30 years. I never involved with Rhode Island, especially from 2009 till now. But because I work for Rhode Island, only because my boss, he was complaining, I'm doing it and mess, he shouldn't do it. But there's no conflict because they don't supply us with concrete. But here, this year, I'm trying to involve because Vinagro, Mr. Andrew Five, he sent me a letter, an email. He said, you are the only one. We used to be 3 people that does that. Because it's not, no money after that. Every 2 years you make $1,000 from the company.
I don't mean to interrupt, I just, thank you, and did we think about a hardship for this at all, or does this not?
No, a hardship is only when someone wants to appear before their own agency. And in this case, Mr. Nemi's not appearing before RIDOT to seek the certification, he's appearing before NRMCA. This, I've been living with this for many weeks, so now through my concrete brain, I'm actually starting to understand some of this. But when this poor gentleman first called me, I said, you want to do what? No, I'm telling you right now, how this is gonna go. You're welcome to it. And then conversation after conversation, I'm surprised you didn't block me on your phone.
No, I don't.
It clicked to me. All right, it's a business associate relationship for the period of time. So you go out there and he tells me it takes an hour or 2 hours. And they're gonna pay him before he submits it. And then it's up to a month for them to get it back unless the company pays NRMCA to get it back in a week. Then it's done. But what about the anticipated future relationship? He's the only one that does this. Well, he doesn't anticipate that he will always be the only one to do this. And the certification is only again in 2 years. So hopefully there's somebody else then. And if not, you come back and we tee this up again. And then what about if lightning strikes and this gentleman is doing a recertification during the 1 month period that this company is before him in RIDOT? Well, let's look at what he does at RIDOT. Here are the test sample numbers. Here's the blue book. Does this equal this? Yes or no? No discretion? Ministerial. So if that lightning were to strike, it would still be okay. Now, Mr. Nemi understands that if he's got, no, that I don't even have to go there because it was ministerial. So for what it took me weeks to understand, I can't expect to have conveyed artfully in 10 minutes, but.
Just you keep suggesting ministerial in nature, then why do we have the process? Why does another individual in a supervisory capacity have to look at the results, and why wouldn't the results just speak for themselves? So if I'm seeing this correctly, there's a human element that says, yes, the results do meet what the blue book says. And I wouldn't, at least in my mind, I don't consider that ministerial. That's a critical, important piece of the engineering process, or else we wouldn't have it.
Well, I guess it's better to say that there's no discretion exercised when I asked Mr. Nemi if he got to exercise discretion when reviewing those results. So perhaps
No, that's very helpful. Is there a metaphor here when you mentioned the how you look at materials ahead of time? Is there sort of a metaphor where you're looking at the ingredients and then the testing is done once all of the premix and that's done after the ingredients are put together, right? And those are 2 separate things. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
They send material to
Yes.
the department, and either me or my boss will look at it. And after we look at it, we take two people to do trial batch. We mix slump, that unit weight, air content, and we make a mold. We break those mold at 7 days and 28 days. Let's say double X, we call it 4,000. Only thing that comes to the lab, the headquarters, another person will break it, then he will send it to me to double check on it to see it meets the 4,000 or not. If it doesn't meet 4,000, I send a form, we call it 311, to the resident engineer. And it's up to him to do anything he wants. He can go to the designer, engineer to make decision. I don't make those decisions. And that's it.
Okay.
You know, like, this, the form I'm talking about too,
No, I believe you, I believe you, yeah,
yeah, you know, like, I try to be prepared.
no, thank you, thank you,
I
yeah,
didn't say-
I don't,
I didn't say-
no one's feeling a lack of preparation at
Yeah.
all, so thank you, it's,
It's really no conflict at all, personally, it's up to you to do the not me. Do I understand it though, what the gentleman is seeking approval for has nothing per se to do with the end product, the adequacy of the end product of the cement, but deals with the process that the plant is utilizing the right equipment, it's properly being operated. So that's what you're seeking, my. Correct.
But
See,
is it,
my concern, just to go
go
to
ahead.
Commissioner Centerides, is if he certified a plant as being qualifying for this, if he helped, you know, with the checklist, but then that plant got jammed up and ended up in court, could the fact that he certified,
He didn't certify the plant, he gathered
just
the
submitted it.
information to the agency
Yep.
that certifies. Right.
okay,
well,
Yeah, but if it is, I'm sorry to say, it, any mechanical, you have nice Mercedes. You drive it, it's brand new, and it broke on the highway, what do you wanna do? Right, makes sense, like any mechanical or electronic could break.
it was my
But it
Nissan
won't
truck
come
that
back
broke
to
down just the other day in Connecticut, so.
No, I mean, it won't come, it doesn't come back to me.
I understand, thank you,
I thought the concern was
thank you.
that if he approved a Rhode Island company that was otherwise not certified, it now went on the list of eligible companies to get jobs in Rhode Island. Did I not understand that right? Isn't his approval necessary for a company to become a qualified Rhode Island?
NRMCA approval.
Right,
Yeah, our standard, our specification. We call it a blue book, it says the plant has to be an RMCA.
in Rhode Island.
And RMCA, it's national. Even in an Arab country, Gulf country, everywhere. But to do it, you have to be NRMCA certified and PE in the same state.
Okay.
Like as I said, you know, like this sheet, I did 10 of them.
Mhm.
You cannot tell anybody, and that's how do you know as your client, customer for that plan, not that you don't have to be right on. But any private customer, you wanna know if that plan certified, he doesn't have to know who's the engineer, because to do that certification, you have to be an RMCA and you have to be PE on the state. Doesn't matter who, as I said, I did 10 of them here.
Is the concern that perhaps Mr. Nemi assists someone with their application to NRMCA, it gets passed, their relationship ends, and then at some point that company says, hey, we have NRMCA, let's go to RIDOT, see if we can get on the list. How would Mr. Nemi be involved in that decision?
That's my question.
I don't.
It's not.
But he is, because without that certification, people can't get on the list.
But he doesn't, it's my understanding that Mr. Nemi doesn't select people to be vendors for RIDOT.
Nor does he apparently as I understand what the gentleman's saying, nor does he participate in the evaluation of the vendor getting on the approved list. He's just doing the
Somebody else,
pre-work.
somebody else makes the decision on who goes on the list.
It's my
So
understanding.
there are circumstances other than merely the certification that are necessary to qualify to be on the list.
I don't believe that NRMCA certification automatically qualifies a cement mix plant to be on RIDOT's list.
Okay. That answers my question.
Any commissioners have questions, concerns?
I have just one quick question. When they're evaluating the adequacy, if it's adequate or not, the concrete, is it by number? So you don't see company names? Do you just see numbers? Or do you see the company, the concrete company?
Yeah, the complete company.
The name is on when you're doing the evaluations of the quality of concrete, the company's name is there, so it's not a blind evaluation. I was just curious about that. You can see.
I can't see.
You can see that who it is whose concrete you're evaluating.
Yeah, but I have nothing to do with that.
Okay, you're not there at all.
No.
Okay,
I believe I asked the same question, Commissioner, during our interview process. If you do an application, assist Vinagro with an application, and later Vinagro's concrete is being tested and you have to look at the results in the blue book, you know it's Vinagro, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean, but I have nothing to do with that. Like you see, two people do the trial batch. And another one break up at 7 days and 28 days,
And it's
and
not
then come, no, not me,
okay.
not me.
And I guess,
Then they come back to me and I will look at them. I mean, it's not because of them, any complete, any report.
Okay,
I check report every day,
yeah.
But
And-
it's not my decision to make, to say, yeah, I
Okay.
want this company, not this one.
Okay,
and the two issues are whether or not he is currently assisting Vinagro with the recertification and hasn't been paid yet and is filling it out, and here comes the test. That's the one where I was led to believe lightning would have to strike for those things to happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
But let's say he did the certification application for Vinagro last year. And here, he's been paid, it's done, someone else is gonna deal with it in 2 years. Here comes Vinagro, is my test okay? Well, let me check the book. One, it's not a business associate anymore, and two, it is, there's no discretion exercise. That's my understanding.
okay. That's good. I'm satisfied.
Any other commissioners have any questions or concerns? We know that you were eliminating the word finally from what the last paragraph, so now you have finally before the final paragraph. As
I was
amended,
gonna change it to, and another thing, but we'll just
you just
strike
take
it.
it finally out of this next to last paragraph. Be that as it may, I'm not gonna consider that an amended. So, is there a motion to approve and issue the advisory opinion as presented by the staff?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Susie, is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Browner, any further discussion? Hearing none, Commissioner Susie. Commissioner Browner. Aye. Yeah, ready to move on. Commissioner Callahan. Aye. Commissioner Centarini.
Aye.
Mr. Ravidu.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss. Aye. The chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Nemi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deschus. That was quite a complex one.
Listen, please.
More about the concrete business than everything.
She's.
Plant, okay, once, for several years.
They don't even let people cry.
It's crying.
No. It's
Oh.
All right, the next one on the agenda, on the sign-in sheet rather, is Tracy Weber. Welcome back.
Good morning, commissioners. This draft advisory opinion is in the tab D in your binders. As you may remember, this draft advisory opinion was initially presented at the March 24th meeting. Based on the discussions that day for the review of this matter and determination on it was deferred to today's hearing. With the intention to receive additional information regarding the monthly progress reports that are required to be sent by a therapist to a DOC, a probation and parole officer supervising the sex offender undergoing sex offender therapy. I was also directed, based on the information that I would receive with regards to the report, to do more research and make a recommendation on whether such a report would constitute the petitioner's representation of her client before the DOC. I did have further conversations with Ms. LaPointe Weber, plenty of them, almost on a daily basis. And did include that information with the additional research in the draft that is being presented today before you. I'll go over type briefly over the main facts and then spend a little bit more time on the additional information. The petitioner is probation and parole officer with the Rhode Island Department of Corrections, and she requests an advisory opinion regarding whether the Code of Ethics prohibits her from establishing and operating an independent clinical therapy practice while continuing her work with the DOC. In November of 2025, she was promoted to serve as a training coordinator. As a training coordinator, she now doesn't have any assigned caseload, nor does she supervise anyone with a caseload of probationers or parolees. She identifies her work hours as 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. She also recently joined the DOC's volunteer peer support group. As a member of that group, she provides support to DOC employees and or their families once they go to some traumatic event, as for example, riots or suicide. She explains that that support sometimes may include the need to refer that employee to therapy. And she represents that if needed, she may ask her peer support coordinator to facilitate that referral without her involvement. In her private capacity, she would like to establish an independent clinical therapy practice alongside with 3 other independently certified licensed therapists. She clarifies that their professional relationship would not be structured under a corporation or any other entity like that, but merely they will share office space and operational expenses. She plans to provide general counseling services to the public, including first responders and juveniles, and a sex offender specific individual or group therapy. She represents the sex offender treatment for sex offenders is mandated by law, and treatment is not optional. She also explains that when treating sex offenders through either individual or group therapy, she would be required to send the monthly progress reports to the DOC probation and parole officer that supervises her client undergoing that sex offender treatment. The petitioner now describes the reports as including the name and the date of birth of the offender, their therapy attendance record, a brief description of the topic areas discussed during the therapy sessions, a description of the offender's behavior during the therapy session that might include their participation in the session or the lack thereof, the general treatment themes, and anything else of note. The reports may also include recommendations for additional services, such as higher level of care, substance abuse counseling when maybe substance abuse is present or suspected, and that may prevent the sex offender from completing their sex offender treatment. Or individual therapy may be recommended if that sex offender is participating in group therapy. The petitioner states that this recommendation for additional services are ordinarily first discussed with the client before those recommendations are sent to the DOC officer. The petitioner knows that, it represents the probation and parole officers are responsible for enforcing compliance by sex offenders with court-ordered conditions. Now, upon the receipt of the monthly progress report, the officer reviews the report. If no concerns are noted, the officer then will include that report in the sex offenders file. If any concerns are noted or recommendations, then the officer would address that with the sex offender. And it is possible that the supervising officer may initiate a technical violation against the offender. Now, Ms. LaPointe Weber explains that technical violation, there is no specific requirements to initiate it, and it's not automatic. It's upon the discretion of the DOC officer. The DOC officer will take into consideration the therapist's recommendation, but also the totality of the circumstances surrounding the sex offender. And then they'll make a determination whether or not to initiate a technical violation against that offender. She also explains that the offenders are fully informed at sentencing at the time of their referral to treatment, and again during intake for treatment, of their obligations during treatment, and the limits of confidentiality and scope of information relative sharing relative to their treatment. So they're aware of what the treatment includes. The petitioner represents that she will complete her private work outside of her normal working hours, at nights and weekends, and without the use of public resources. Now, given this set of facts, she's asking whether or not she can establish and operate her independent private clinical therapy. The Ethics Commission has consistently opined that public officials and employees are not inherently prohibited from holding employment that is secondary to their public employment, provided that private employment would neither impair the independence of judgment, nor create an interest in substantial conflict with the discharge of their public duties. When considering potential conflicts between private and public employment, the Commission examines several factors. You've heard them from Attorney Radishes. They're also listed on page 4 of the draft. Here, the petitioner represents that her DOC duties no longer include supervision of caseload of offenders, nor do they include supervision of DOC employees with such caseload. Based on the facts as represented by the petitioner, it is the opinion of the staff that there is no evidence to suggest that her anticipated private counseling work would impair her independence of judgment or create an interest in substantial conflict with the discharge of her public duties. Provided, however, that she comply with the restrictions that I'll address momentarily, and provided that her work is private work is done outside of her normal working hours without the use of public resources, and without the use of a public position to advertise her private work. Now, on to the more substantive restrictions. As a volunteer member of the DOC peer support team, she may have to make a recommendation for a peer to undergo treatment. Under those circumstances, she would have to recuse from making this recommendation if she is to operate her private therapy work, given that her business associates, her and her business associates, the other 2 therapists, will be providing therapy. She will also be prohibited from working in her private capacity, providing therapy to any of her peers that she's working with in her public capacity. And now, addressing the revolving door provisions of the code, specifically section 5E. It prohibits a public official or an employee from representing herself or others before her public agency. Now, representation includes the presentation of evidence or arguments before that agency for the purpose of influencing the decision of the agency in her own favor or in favor of business associate or clients. These prohibitions are designed to minimize any undue influence that a current or former employee may have over their current or former fellow colleagues or agency, and that's while they're serving or for a period of 1 year thereafter. These prohibitions do not extend to the performance of ministerial duties, functions that are not substantive in nature and do not involve agency decision making. The usual examples of this ministerial activities are hand delivering documents, requesting or reviewing public records from that agency. I have listed a couple of examples that I'll mention. One is Advisory Opinion 2023-28. There, an engineering technician at the Rhode Island DOT could accept private employment with a subcontractor to a DOT contractor. That engineering technician, as part of his private work, was collecting data, information, and providing daily reports to his employer. The employer then submits those reports to the contractor, and that would review them and then see, just to confirm at what stage the contract is at and what work has been done, and then they submitted their request for payment to the DOT. Ultimately, those reports would make their way to the DOT file. The commission determined that those reports were ministerial. It was not considered representation of that employee's private employer before the DOT. And the reason was because DOT did not rely on those reports. DOT created their own reports, collected their own data. All they did with the reports is sometimes just to look at them, just to make sure that they're the same, that there's no discrepancies, but they did not rely on them. So the commission determined that there was not representation. The other example where the commission determined that there was no representation was in Advisory Opinion 2010-23, where a former chief administrative officer of the Rhode Island Board of Medical Licensure and Discipline for the Department of Health, who was then employed as the chief medical officer for Landmark Medical Center, was not prohibited from making information inquiries to the DOH and from reporting information to it, including information mandated by state statute. Such information included reporting illness or communicable disease or the treatment of impaired physician, since that person would not be representing himself or another person before the DOH. So these were a little bit more complex examples of acts that are ministerial and not substantive. On the other hand, when interpreting 5E's prohibition as to acts which are other than ministerial, the Ethics Commission has previously advised officials and employees that activities that will constitute representation generally include the presentation of information or arguments for the person of influence in the judgment of that agency. And those included, but are not limited to, personal involvement in the matters and substantive presentation or appearance for their public agency on behalf of themselves or their business associates or employers. Attending and participating in meetings between their private and public employer, acting as an expert witness on behalf of a private employer client, submitting applications signed by them on behalf of themselves or clients. I have listed several examples on pages 6 and 7 of the draft. I'll mention one advisory opinion that it's on point here. It has similar fact pattern. That's advisory opinion 2024-13. The Ethics Commission opined that the DCYF social casework was not prohibited from accepting private employment as a clinician with the INAU counseling center, where she was to provide therapeutic services to adolescents. She was prohibited, however, from, among other things, from appearing before DCYF as a clinician for INAU, which included but was not limited to reporting to the DCYF on an INAU client who became open to the DCYF after beginning therapy. Acting as an expert witness on behalf of the INAU or an INAU client, or submitting to the DCYF documentation from INAU that contained the petitioner's name on it, or which was identifiable as the petitioner's work product. Here, the monthly progress report that the petitioner will be required to submit to the DCYF is part of the mandated sex offender treatment. And the offenders are fully informed at all those stages that there will be a requirement to disclose certain information. The information included in the reports includes the therapist's observation of the offender's behavior during the treatment and could include recommendation for additional services based on the needs of the offender and the need for the successful completion of their treatment. Additionally, the monthly progress report is reviewed by the DOC officer supervising the offender to determine whether the offender is compliant with the mandatory therapy, or whether there is a cause for violation based on the report and the totality of the circumstances. Therefore, based on the petitioner's representations and the review of the relevant provisions of the Code of Ethics, the prior advisory opinion, it is the opinion of the staff that the report that is submitted constitutes a representation of Ms. LaPointe Weber of the client for the DOC, and she will be prohibited from doing so, as long as that's a requirement. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
It's the point, Weber, you've obviously been here before, you've had an opportunity to work with Ms. Papa, you're aware of the terms of the proposed advisory opinion. You have any questions or concerns that you'd like to express at this point?
I understand.
Prior to her responding, but I just bring up certain points I think that she should consider.
I only wanted to give her the opportunity first to indicate whether she's got any concerns. Let me let her answer the question, then I'll come directly to you.
Thank you.
Questions?
I understand where the opinion is coming from. I still feel that it's a bit more complex than just representing a client to my agency, simply because the information that I'm presenting isn't subjective or is it entirely subjective? I could say it. There's never a never, right? And I just feel like that the nuance is that while the information is present, just simply not coming to therapy is most likely, very much most likely not going to be the trigger for a violation or a decision that's made for the client. There is typically a totality of circumstances that are included in that. And oftentimes probation kind of gets a bad rap, you know.
The purpose isn't necessarily just to try to maybe incarcerate someone, it's to try to work with them and figure out what's going on with them.
Just speak up slightly.
I'm sorry, it's to try to
Don't
work
worry about the public.
with the client and try to figure out what's going on with them to mitigate circumstances that might prohibit them from participating in whatever they need to participate in or improving their lives in any way. So that's really up to the judge to decide if something is going to happen as far as sentencing or even if the violation will be heard. But that's.
Mr. Severini.
Having worked closely with probation over 20 years with my prior career. And I think at the end of the applicant's presentment, she sort of opened up matters that I think the commission should consider. Whether a person is placed on probation is following an adjudication, either an admission of a criminal wrong, and then a judge would hear from either the state's prosecutor, defense attorneys, and make and order a sentence. The sentence could include probation. And the judge could be more specific as to the general conditions of probation, which are generally to keep the peace, be of good behavior, report to probation, but there could be special conditions, counseling, community service, and such. If, or the point that the applicant is also raising and the staff is raising is the sexual counseling requirement on felons. Probation, at least from the viewpoint of my earlier career's position, was to monitor compliance on behalf of the board of the general conditions of probation and the special conditions of probation. I never heard of any judicial officer expressing any concerns that the probation officer represented the client in any particular way. They were there to monitor compliance, report to the court, and if the compliance was not significant, it was then up to the Attorney General's office, usually, to file a violation called the 32F based upon the criminal laws of procedure. That could result in an attitude adjustment between the judge and the defendant, or possible incarceration. If it was going to lead to possible incarceration in any way, shape, or form, as that came to the attention, then the client was referred either get an attorney or the public defender, because the liberty interest. A person on probation did not have a presumption of innocence because they had already admitted to the charge. Probation was solely there to monitor the compliance and to bring to the attention of the judge but non-compliance in any particular way. Now, the applicants seeking apparently this position to try to become a licensed social worker. I mean, I believe, miss, you got to get in so many hours,
Yes.
independent.
To be independent, yes.
And it usually the private counselors, I've never seen a private counsel per se represent a client in a way one would think of like an attorney. And usually the information that's presented is very, very limited because you've got HIPAA concerns. So, and if there was a need, it was always to try to ensure compliance. Or the alternative was attitude adjustment, potential incarceration. So that in my mind, I don't see that this person, in light of the parameters of the restrictions imposed by staff, would be representing a client, a private client. They sure as heck don't represent, in the criminal aspect, private client.
I think, unless I'm reading it wrong, it's the submission of the report to the probation department. There's a representation of a client for the agency. Not coming to court with that information, because probation is going to take that report, if I understand it, and prepare their papers to come before you and say, he hasn't been in compliance. What do you want to do about it?
But there's an inherent nexus in that process that leads to the court.
I understand, but what the issue is, her making her reports and then submitting them to the agency that she works for, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I don't see that as representation myself. I mean, I mean, does a doctor who provides a report on a medical condition, is that doctor representing the client before hypothetically workers' comp or whoever? I don't see it.
Yeah. Please.
Your clinical supervisor, we chatted a bit about her last time. Is she a member of the peer support group?
I don't know that she's a member anymore. I believe she used to be,
Okay,
but I don't believe she is anymore. I could be mistaken.
okay. I know that it's customary that clinical supervisors are paid to work for someone who's working on their hours. How is your clinical supervisor being paid? Do you pay for that?
Oh, she's not. I'm not paying them to supervise you. No.
Okay. But I needed.
Any other questions? So could you take just a minute, and if you had a chance to kind of not rewrite the whole draft, that's not what we're trying to get after, but you do appear to have some reservations, and could you articulate what would open the aperture a little bit more for you in terms of why you have those reservations?
Really, the majority of my reservations come from opinions that were made before that I guess similar information wasn't included. So although it may have been written, it wasn't necessarily included in the opinion of the commission. So that's where I wasn't really understanding where the scrutiny was coming from in this particular opinion, when in other opinions, my coworkers were and not just my coworkers now, but just in general, were able to or approved to practice the same way. But this time is different. And so that was just my question overall. Outside of that, I understand where she's going.
Did you all have a conversation about that? I mean,
Correct. Ms. LaPointe Weber had submitted all those advisory opinions, numbers that she had mentioned during the previous meeting. I reviewed them and then we discussed them. There, she's correct. There was no analysis with regards to 5A in the revolving door provision. There was no mentioning of anything going from their private employer or from them to their public agency. So that was not part of the facts, that was not taken into consideration. Most of the things that were reviewed and the what was taken into consideration was whether the DUC officers have had a caseload and whether they were making referrals to the program that they wanted to work for or anyone else who provides that program. So there was no indication, so I couldn't really compare to anything else with regards to DOC. It's just the analysis was not there, it wasn't in the facts. I don't know if that was ever part in the facts when there were communications between the commission and those petitioners. It just came up when we were discussing now, so I had to address it and have the discussion for that.
Any other questions, comments? There are motion to approve the advisory opinion as issued, motion by Commissioner Severini, is there a second?
Yeah.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yeah,
move.
again, I realize we look alike, but done it again,
I'm on it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's you and me both. You and me both. So that's, you're
Not gonna slip aside either of you. Yeah. All right,
I'll second.
thank you. So I have a motion by Commissioner Callan and a second by Commissioner Severini. Any further discussion? A roll call vote, Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Commissioner Bronner.
Aye.
Commissioner Callahan.
Aye.
Commissioner Severini.
Aye.
Commissioner Rabideau.
Aye.
Mr. Strauss. Aye. And the chair votes aye for all of that. Thank you very much for coming back twice. We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
The next sign-in is not one of the people whose names,
It's on behalf of Mr. Thomas,
behalf of whom?
Joel Thomas.
Okay,
On
I was
behalf-
gonna get there. That's what I figured with the city of Warwick, but I wasn't sure. So, and I can't read the name either, so.
David Marks.
David, I got it. Marks, no. Which is good because I just screwed it up. I had that.
It's an easy one.
All right, so this is the advisory opinion on
Tab B.
Major Joel Thomas, Operations Bureau Commander of the Warwick Police Department. And would you identify yourself, please?
David Marks, Assistant Solicitor for City of Warwick.
Thank you.
Mr. Joel Thomas is unable to attend today. I believe Attorney Marks will address that.
That's fine.
There was some communications issue and then he had a police assignment that he was not able to attend. But our office did get in touch with him this morning. And he indicated he has read the draft opinion. He indicated that he understood the opinion and had no questions or concerns.
Okay. Stop.
I'm happy to proceed as long as you allow me
I think we
to.
have to hear you. Unless everybody's ready to vote based on what was written, I think we'd like to hear your presentation.
So Major Thomas is Operation Bureau Commander with the Warwick Police Department. In his private capacity, he developed a unique computer software program called Omni Intelligence. And he is seeking guidance regarding what restrictions, if any, the Code of Ethics places upon his ability to contract with public and private entities inside and outside of Rhode Island for the use of his software program. He describes the software program as functioning as a shared drive. He explains that a user inputs information, creates a database, then users can plug in some words and then or questions and then receive back information based on that database. He represents that he developed that software program on his own initiative and on his own time, separate and apart from his official duties. To date, he has not benefited financially from the software program. He represents the recently he created a corporation, filed copyright application, and he's exploring his options and how he can contract with state municipal agencies in private agencies inside and outside of Rhode Island. He represents that a municipal ordinance prohibits him from contracting with any municipal agencies within the city of Warwick. However, the petitioner is considering that if permitted by the code, he would like to allow the Warwick Police Department to use the software program free of charge in order to help improve the department's operations. The petitioner represents that if allowed to provide the police department with the software program for free, he does not require any feedback because the software program is complete at this time. Under the code, no person subject to the code, nor any business entity in which said person has a 10% or greater equity interest of 5,000 or greater cash value interest may enter into any contract with any state or municipal agency unless that contract has been awarded through an open and public process, including prior public notice and subsequent public disclosure of all proposals considered and contracts awarded. There is an exception for contracts for professional services that ordinarily are awarded without competitive bidding. And those are typically related to contracts for legal, medical services, architectural services. This here does not fit into that category. Here, the petitioner represents that a municipal ordinance prohibits him from contracting with any municipal agency within Warwick. Therefore, we are not addressing any of the code provisions related to contracting with his own municipality. However, the petitioner may contract with other municipal, state agencies or private entities within or outside of Rhode Island, provided that pursuant to Section 5H, contracting with any state or municipal agency has to be through an open and public process or competitive bidding. Notwithstanding the provisions of 5H, the Ethics Commission has previously, in very, very limited circumstances, has allowed public officials to contract with Rhode Island state and municipal agencies without complying with the competitive bidding requirements of 5H if their business was the sole supplier for the product and the contract complied with the state laws for the sole source procurement. Here, we don't have any specific circumstances presented by the petitioner. We don't know if that is going to apply. So we also are not addressing it at a later time. If that comes up, he is welcome to come back and seek further guidance from the commission. The petitioner is advised that all of his work related to the self-work program and its distribution shall be performed on his own time without the use of public resources or confidential information, and he should not be using his public office to advertise his private work. He is also not prohibited from providing the software program free of charge to the Warwick Police Department. However, he should not later sell additional products to the Warwick Police Department with regards to that software program. Here we cannot anticipate any and all circumstances that may come up. So the petitioner is advised to seek further guidance if necessary. Yeah, I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
Would you have any questions? I did not know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you just pull the thread a little bit? If he's providing the program free of charge, right? And then he's ultimately prohibited for whatever that period of time is to ever selling it to the city of Warwick. Is he prohibited from getting feedback on how to improve this donation to the city that he theoretically can't assume a financial interest from? So why would we prohibit that, I guess? Or why would that be a prohibition?
So if, for example, he was developing a program, Mr.
Sure.
President, I'll give it to you, test it, give
Sure.
me, let me know what you
Sure.
think, then that might be considered use of office for financial gain, where you are giving that program to be tested by your own department and give you feedback so you can improve it and then sell it. So he had said, I don't need any feedback. I am happy to tell them, don't give me any feedback. I don't want it because it's completed.
I would, from a software, I'm no software engineer, but that does seem a bit unusual, in software world, that we wouldn't obtain feedback from a client, okay.
A user. A user.
Yeah, user. Okay,
Yeah.
that's-
Any other questions for Ms. Papa? Attorney Marks, you said your client, I don't even know that it's technically your client, but you're saying that, you spoke with Major Thomas and he's okay with this opinion as drafted and presented to him.
Another attorney in my office spoke to her this morning, and then I spoke to her.
So you're confident in that representation?
Yes. And just to clarify, I'm here on behalf of the city, just to share that the city is also, has no issues with any of this opinion.
And I perceive it that the city, from its review, feels that there would be a benefit in receiving.
I think so. It hasn't really gone up the channels yet.
Well, obviously, the chain of command in the police department, must have some interest in it, I would imagine.
Questions? Is there a motion to approve the advisory opinion as presented by the staff? It's actually to approve and issue the advisory opinion as presented by the staff. Is there a motion? Moved. Motion by Commissioner Callahan, second by Commissioner Rabideau. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Commissioner Browner.
Aye.
Commissioner Callahan.
Aye.
Commissioner Celerini.
Aye.
Commissioner Rabideau.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss. Aye. Chair votes aye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please let Major Thomas know that it's fine that he couldn't show you that. We don't hold it against him. He's not the first and he won't be the last.
Will, thank you.
The last one we have here today is Lucien Benoit.
Correct, on the top seeing the binders. Mr. Benoit had a prior engagement. He apologizes, he cannot be here today. He has no concerns, no questions. When I last spoke with him, he was okay with the facts as presented, and he agrees to go forward in his absence. I do appreciate Jay Jones had brought up to my attention discrepancy. And I confirm with the petitioner, we've corrected it. It's not basis for the analysis. It's on page 1, footnote 1. The petitioner informs that the property that is the subject of the application is approximately 40,000 square feet in size, and it's proposed to be subdivided in 126 lots. Chair Jones pointed out that the lots will be significantly
300
small.
feet, I believe.
Yeah, no.
307 square feet per lot.
Large enough. So I did confirm with the petitioner, and he represented that the size of the property is 270 acres. So that will be corrected when the advisory opinion is issued. I think the lot sizes individually would be around 30 to 40,000 square feet. Mr. Benoit is a member of the North Smithfield Planning Board. He seeks guidance regarding whether he is permitted by the Code of Ethics to attend and speak at a public hearing before his own board on an application for the approval of proposed subdivision and development of property that directly abuts his personal residence that he has owned since 1968. The review of the application is actually in a few days. And Mr. Benoit would like to appear before the planning board in his private capacity as an abutter and as a resident to express his concerns with regards to traffic, drainage, the health, safety and welfare of his neighborhood associated with the proposed subdivision and development of that property. He anticipates that there will be multiple hearings, not just the upcoming one. Under the code, a public official, as you know, may not participate in any matter if it will, if there will be a direct financial impact upon him, his family member, business associates, and so forth. The code also prohibits the petitioner from representing himself or others before his own board. Now, in matters pertaining to real property, the Ethics Commission applies a rebuttable presumption that a property owner will be financially impacted by official action concerning abutting property. Therefore, the petitioner correctly anticipates that he would have to recuse from, as a planning board member, from participating in the review of that application. However, the code contains the public forum exception that provides there shall be no violation of the code by virtue of any person publicly expressing their viewpoints in a public forum on any matter of general public concern or on any matter which directly affects that individual or his spouse or dependent child. I have listed several examples of past advisory opinions in that exception on pages 2 and 3 of the draft. Here, based on the petitioner's representations, those opinions, it is the staff that based on the public forum exception, the petitioner may refusal member then stand up and appear before the planning board to express his own viewpoints and concerns as an abutter and as a resident, provided that he does not receive any access or priority not available to any other member of the public. The petition is for the caution not to use his position in any way to influence the planning board's decision regarding the matter. And he's not allowed to use any confidential information that he may have obtained in his public capacity to financially benefit himself or his family members. And he's welcome to come and seek further guidance if necessary. In regards to this matter, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
There being none. Is there a motion to approve and issue the advisory opinion as presented by staff with the correction of the numbers that Papa laid out? So, motion by Commissioner Browner, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Susie. Further discussion? Good. Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Commissioner Browner. Mr. Callahan.
Aye.
Centerini.
Aye.
Mr. Rabideau.
Aye.
Sherry Strauss. Aye. The chair votes aye. Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Thank you.
All right, that completes the advisory opinions. Next item on the agenda is a motion to go into executive session to wit. A motion to approve minutes of the executive session held on March 24, 2026. So to RI General Law Section 42-46-5, subsection A, subsection 2, and subsection 4. And then a motion to return to open session. Is there such a motion? So, motion by Commissioner Callahan, second by Commissioner Rabideau, I believe. Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Browner. Aye. Callahan.
Aye.
Mr. Centerini.
Aye.
Mr. Rabideau.
Aye.
Mr. Strauss. Aye. Chair votes aye. We'll now go into executive session. Yeah, we have to wait anyway, so.